Thanks for tuning in. We're Ace Comicals. I have with me my co-host Rahuldiscuss and Leon Everett. I'm Greg Driver. Let's get started. Hi guys, welcome. Episode number 35, and as always, we have a bunch of stuff to power through. It's been a stacked 2 weeks with Free Comic Book Day, and also some great new books hitting the shelves of your LCS, that's your local comic book shop, or, if you prefer it that way, the digital shelves. So, as always, I'm joined by the usual suspects. We've got Leon.
Hey guys.
And Ray.
What's up, guys?
And, guys... It's been a stacked 2 weeks, like I said, so what's everyone been up to? Apart from Free Comic Book Day, which we'll come on to in a moment.
I can barely remember. I'm having to check my calendar, but while I'm doing that, Leon, you sounded like you were going to say something.
What have I been up to? I mean, it's been, you know what life's like. It's like busy, but it's also a blur. In the last couple of weeks, I've seen... Avengers again, which was a fun experience.
Is that your second time?
Yeah, it's my second time.
Yeah,
and it was good because it was an opportunity to, you know, relive some of the good moments and sort of delve deeper into things I might not have liked as much the first time. And I definitely think I enjoyed it more on a second watch. Though, man, all my powers of concentration were used during this viewing because it had some audience members not too far away sitting from us who were the absolute worst. Just every type of noise they could make possible, but it was never prolonged. It was always in annoying bursts, at least for me. So... I made it through. I survived. But yeah, it was really worth seeing again, and I'm looking forward to checking it out on the next cycle, around like Blu-ray release, when we're a bit more removed. We've had Ant-Man and the Wasp. I would have been able to see Black Panther again. And more things will be in the zeitgeist in terms of what types of what's on the horizon, basically comic-wise. So, yeah, I'm interested to see how it's joined the general pop culture zeitgeist, and I mean we've seen that already with the proliferation of memes going out, especially about the end of the film. So I'm interested to see how deep it weaves its way into the rest of pop culture. But yeah, apart from that, I've been trying to get back on my comics bullshit and my TV bullshit. But it's been tough. But...
Comics bullshit? I mean, I'll accept you calling TV bullshit. But...
No, my comics bullshit.
Oh, right, okay.
So I've been delving into some older and longer stuff, but those are things I'm going to speak about more in depth on a future episode. But yeah, TV wise, it's been a more of a catch up of things like Atlanta, the This Is America video that everyone is obsessed about, and season 2s of a lot of shows. Like we've spoken about Legion before. Handmaid's Tale has returned, and there's a lot of stuff on my list that I'm trying to get to while it's still fresh. But yeah, that's me.
Are we ever not going to be talking about irritating people at the cinema? Like, I feel like does AC stand for like annoying cinema goers or like aggravated cinephiles? I don't know. Like, we've always got some sort of complaint to make about people having bad.
It's never going to end.
It's never going to end. Although I've got a positive story because I went to go see A Quiet Place at the weekend. I took my underage nephew to see a 15 film. He's 13. Okay. Hopefully that's not illegal to the point that I'm going to get arrested by putting this on Digital Ink, but whatever.
Already dobbed you in.
Yeah, that's it. The police are already listening, man.
If
I'm wearing a wire
is going to be on my rap sheet, then I'm happy with it. He's been wanting to see it, so we went to go see A Quiet Place, and we were in a fairly small screening that was full of teenage girls for some reason. Like, it was at 5 p.m. on a Saturday night. Full of teenage girls. We walked in, we were like, oh my god, this is gonna suck. And it turned out they were like the perfect audience. They were like quiet when they should have been quiet, and then they were yelping when, you know, all the tense bits happened, and it was really good. Like, it was a really good screening with a really good audience. So I had to swallow my my prejudice a little bit there. But that's a really good film as well. It's one that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and I can understand why Leon was gushing about it the last time, but also being very careful about not to say too much about it. But I'd highly recommend it if you like your tense thriller horrors.
The less you know going in, the better, I say.
Yes, for sure.
I've yet to see it, but I'm hearing good things, so I think it's one that's on my list, and I need to catch it before it leaves the cinema. Definitely.
Yeah, it does a lot of really creative things with playing with sound, which I think there was another film fairly recently that did a similar thing. What am I thinking of? It had the old guy from Avatar in it.
Yeah.
Don't Breathe. It's very similar in its presentation as that, in the way that it plays with noise.
Yeah.
So if you like that, I think you'll like this. And then also, what else did I do? Went home for the weekend, did a lot of gardening, which was unusual, and I feel like an old man in the sense that I really enjoyed it. And I wish I had a garden. You guys have both been to my flat, and there's no greenery anywhere that I can access in my house. So next step, I'm going to maybe get some windowsill plants.
Get a window box or something.
Yeah, I'm thinking that. I'm going to do that. But that's me being an old person, and then I brought all my comics back with me as well. Yeah. So I was doing the gardening and then read all my free comic book day comics. So I was sort of straddling my ages.
Grow some herbs, man. Grow some herbs in a window box.
Hey man, he's already breaking the law, bringing his nephew to films that he shouldn't be going to.
Taking his nephew to films that he shouldn't be seeing. Growing herbs.
I can neither confirm nor deny my willingness or want to grow any herbs. So,
I was talking about for cooking, but there you go.
Oh yeah, me too. That's Basil's a bitch to look after. You know? But yeah, that was my week. How about you, Greg?
Well, it's been a lot of comics, because coming back from Free Comic Book Day, I had the huge stack of Free Comic Book Day stuff, plus all my regular stuff, plus all the other things I bought during Free Comic Book Day. And I've just been, literally, what I've been doing, like, for my sort of downtime, my chill time, is I've been hooking my phone up to the speakers downstairs and just putting on some punk playlist or other. And there's also some instrumental stuff that I found on YouTube that I've been putting on. So, like, I found a couple of videos where people have stripped the vocals from Deftones songs. So I've just been listening to instrumental versions of Deftones tracks while reading comics in my living room, where it's nice and cool. And I bring my long box downstairs, and I sit there with my long box on top of the coffee table and a drink, and I sit there reading comics. And that started on the Monday after Free Comic Book Day, so the bank holiday Monday, and continued as a way for me to sort of like wind down after work and stuff. And it's really good. I love doing it. It's like my new favourite thing to do. It's been that. It's been catching up on Netflix stuff. So I think I was like 2 episodes back on Riverdale, and I watched both of those. And that blew my mind. Am I allowed to talk about it on here?
I haven't caught up, but I can duck out for a minute if there's anything spoilery that you absolutely need to get off your chest.
Well, I can hold it in, but you need to watch it.
I will. This is I think
that you definitely need to do.
Yeah,
I know, especially because you guys are raving about it and you know my tastes, so I trust you wholeheartedly with it. But it's such a slog to get through, and I'm not a TV person to begin with, but I do want to get to it just based on the hype from you lot.
It's interesting the journey that I've taken with Riverdale, because it started off when it sort of like first hit, because I didn't, obviously Leon's up on TV more than I am, so Leon probably knew about it when it was just on TV, on CW or whatever, but I didn't really catch on until it hit Netflix. And being a comics fan, I was aware of the Archie comics and stuff like that, and I had some of the Archie horror stuff, and I was already reading stuff like that. And then this hits Netflix, and I'm just like, what is this teen show? You know, like, what is this trash kind of thing? When I first started watching it, and now I'm absolutely addicted. I can't.
I feel like I've got the opposite graph, because I was into it from the get-go. I loved season 1, and then I started finding season 2 really tedious. And I don't know how far back I am, but I hit a point where I was like, I can't be asked. They're not like if you think of like a seesaw, and you have the cool, sexy, pretty, attractive teenage drama stuff on one end, and all the bullshit on the other, and it's slowly started to swing where the bullshit outweighs all the good stuff.
Yeah, but like season 2 is fire. It's like, oh my god, how can you hate season 2? It's like a slasher movie.
I can understand. I can understand, because one of the differences with season 1 and season 2 is that season 1 aired as a mid-season replacement, so it was a half season order. So immediately season 2 has a back 9, and because they've had certain storylines that they've dragged the whole way, it's really like been a slog in some areas. But I think that mainly pertains to the storylines that I don't care about. Whereas the crazy, like, just obscene, ridiculous stuff going on on the, I say, less important storylines are actually like my stuff right there. So I'm fully in for that.
I feel like there's enough crazy, obscene stuff that when I watch it, I don't like the bits where maybe it does fall short slightly for you guys. Don't bother me, because there's enough of it there, enough of the crazy, obscene stuff to just sort of keep me like engaged the whole time.
Yeah,
so, but
see, without going too much into detail, I don't really care about the Black Hood stuff. I care more about whatever they have Cheryl doing from episode to episode. Like, that's my bullshit, and I'm here for it. And there's a lot of sort of fun tropes that they're using that have been in other teen shows and other primetime soap dramas, and I think they're being really good at referencing that stuff, and having their own sort of spin. Because, I mean, this show, like, it does that thing where it has its cake and eats it, where it's like, oh, isn't this thing really silly? But then we're going to do it as well as be like faux satire of it. And I kind of love when it just leans into that ridiculousness.
Yeah, without giving too much away, there's stuff like street racing and things, which I thought is exactly that, the having your cake and eating stuff. And I do like those moments, but I think it's more just a me thing of sitting down and doing one thing for an hour at a time.
Yeah.
Which I just need to get over.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of thing that I sometimes struggle with, but for some reason I can sit and watch this and it doesn't, like, faze me at all or anything. Other than that, there's not been a lot else. Just chilling, enjoying the nice weather, reading comics and watching Riverdale. So there was that one thing that we all did, which I alluded to at the start of this episode, which was Free Comic Book Day. So, I mean, if any of you guys follow Ace Comicals anywhere other than the main podcast, like on any of our social media channels, you will find videos on our Instagram of when we went to Free Comic Book Day, and a couple of pictures and things like that on the Twitter feed. And it was a really good, really fun day out. I travelled down to London and met up with Ray and Leon, the other two guys, and we just basically checked out all the comic shops in London and had a really nice weekend of it. And the weather was definitely on our side, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a really good day trip for you guys. So it was a good weekend.
It was a good weekend, and Sophie came with us too, and some of our other friends turned up to party with us, and it was great.
What time did you set off in the morning again?
Oh, like something silly, like before you should actually be awake o'clock or something. I don't know. It's like,
I saw an Instagram from you at like 5 a.m. and for whatever reason I was up at the time as well, so I got the alert. But yeah, it's stupid o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
setting off from Leicester to get to London.
5 something. I say it in the video. It's like 5 to 6 in the morning. I think I was making that video. Sat in St Mary's bus shelter in Leicester, waiting for the National Express bus down to London. Watching the last dregs of the drunken horde from the Friday evening sort of like make their way home, chips in hand kind of thing, you know.
Chips in hand.
It's funny because like where that bus station is, if you ever catch an early bus, it's right next to a nightclub. So like kicking out time for that nightclub is like 5 o'clock. There's still people around the nightclub waiting for taxis and things like that. Mm-hmm. So you're there like wide awake, sober as a judge, waiting for a bus, surrounded by people screaming each other's names, like looking for missing friends, waiting for taxis and stuff. And it's surreal. It's weird. But anyway, we caught the bus and we got into Victoria, and we met you guys near Gosh, didn't we? And Gosh was the first place we hit. And while I was at
Comics in Soho.
Gosh Comics, yeah. So while we were at Gosh, actually, I noticed there was a poster in the window, and they were doing a signing later on that day with Mike and Laura Allred, who are the people responsible for Madman, and there's a Silver Surfer run they did, and tons of other really cool stuff like Doom Patrol and things. They do some great art, and Mike does some great writing as well, Mike Allred, and they are like one of my favourite sort of like, they are two of my favourite comic creators, and I couldn't pass up the opportunity. I had to go back for the signing, and I took along some Madman graphic novels to get signed, and it was a really cool experience meeting the guy. We talked about tattoos because he's got some really awesome tattoos, and I got a photograph with him. And I got a photograph with him and Laura, and it was really cool. Meeting both of them was really nice, and it was like a really nice topping for the day kind of thing. So after we had like all the great weather and we chilled out on the park with some drinks and some food, and then we went back and got my comic signed, and then that was like the high point of my day. It was great. I loved it.
You did seem pretty jolly.
Yeah, you guys were all waiting in the queue with me, and I was like having all that anxiety, like, what if I come off as too much of a nerd or some kind of like freak creeper nerd type person or something? That was what I was worried about, coming off as one of these like sweaty palm fans or whatever. But no, it was cool. I enjoyed it. It was good.
Whenever you meet your like people that you really like and you leave with no restraining order, that's always a victory.
Yeah. I don't ever want to be in that club, and that's what I always worry about. Like, I'm going to meet someone that I admire, be it an artist or a writer or something like that, and I'm going to come off as nuts or crazy or something. So it's like, it's that point where you're telling yourself that they're just people, so just be a person. But then like you sort of like work that up in your head, and then you be a person too much, if that makes sense.
I think you came off really well talking to him. And they were definitely interested in you because he spotted your tattoos, and they, he started a whole conversation about that. That was really cool.
It was nice, yeah. It was nice to meet him. It's nice to meet Laura Allred, and it was nice to meet the creators of some of my favourite comics, because I do love the Madman books. They're great. And if there's ever something that I'm going to recommend on this podcast, it's that. Definitely. I think I've talked about it like hundreds of times previously, but yeah, those are great books, and I will sing their praises until I am nailed into a coffin underground.
And just to remind everybody, this is the queue for the signing, not for Supreme. The Supreme line is
yeah. We had so many, there was this huge queue for the signing, and then a security guard just sort of walked down the queue, and we instantly lost 5 or 6 people in front of us because they were all queuing for a designer shop that's just down from where Gosh is in Soho. And I'm told that this place is a place that opens... Does it open once a week?
I think so. I'm not that clued up on it, but it's always got a queue outside.
And you
what happens is that they have drops on certain days, and there's a limited number of what particular item it is. So you'll get people who will line up so they can be one of the people to get those. But I think the balance between normal people want to pick that stuff up and hype beasts is probably 90-10 now. And it's hype beasts or hype beast couriers probably taking up all the space, so they can buy that stuff and then sell it on eBay for 5 times the price.
But it's also the the sort of mirror of people queuing for fashion items and people queuing for comics on opposite sides of the road. When we were standing there waiting.
The queues were mingling together, which was really confusing. And it doesn't help that Supreme's queue gets split into 2 at some point, because there's not enough space on the street for everybody to queue up for it, so they put them back towards the chicken shop at the back of the alley.
Basically,
it makes you think that they're queuing up for chicken when they're not, which was really confusing the first time I wanted to go to that chicken shop. I was like, why is there such a big queue just to get fried chicken? It wasn't for that.
Basically,
it was for the clothes shop.
I think Soho is London slang for queue. But yeah, because when we were walking around and we saw some of the restaurants and stuff, people were queuing to get into restaurants to eat breakfast and things like that, and it's how have you got that much time on your hands? That you would queue up for breakfast, why not just go somewhere else? Is it that good?
Evidently.
Well, they've been told, and Google has said, so while you're in London for a day, you just gotta go there.
I know, but you're only in London for a day at the same time.
But you're there
you know me, I hate queuing normally.
Yeah, so I can't. I'm not the biggest fan of queuing. I'd never queue for something that didn't warrant it. I couldn't. I don't think I myself I will queue for things. I queued for a signing. I've queued for free comics. I've queued for releases of stuff and whatever else. But if I was out somewhere for a day out and I needed to eat something, I don't think I could queue for a restaurant like that. Not like they were queuing, because you would be standing outside waiting for ages, because people are going to sit down and eat and finish their food, and then they're probably going to chill for a bit before they get them out and get the next table in, That to me just seems like queuing that long for... I mean, waiting for a table maybe 5-10 minutes max, but I'd never queue like that for breakfast, no, or for food. On a day out, it just sounds like it would take an hour to get in there to get sat down.
What if it's a limited edition dish there? You got to get that dish while it's still available.
Has it got a Supreme logo on it?
What if your favourite foodista signed their name in egg, into your hash browns? And
that's worth it.
Right? I mean, come on, to each their own. You queued up all this time to see Mike Allred, and
True. Yeah, I'm saying that. I'm saying to each their own, but at the same time, I don't know. Anyway, in summary,
Greg Driver loves comics, hates breakfast.
Before we move on completely, side segue.
Yeah.
I picked up some limited edition clothes, really, yesterday, and they arrived today. And what they were is Uniqlo have got the there's a Shonen Jump 50 anniversary tie-in of Uniqlo going on.
Okay.
So they've released a bunch of T-shirts, similar to what they did last year with the Nintendo limited edition lines, and various different designs of different Nintendo characters on them and IP. This time they've been doing it with Shonen Jump stuff.
Yeah.
So I saw a friend yesterday who had tweeted stuff they picked up, and I was like, what the hell? Mm-hmm. So, like, I weighed up, can I be bothered to go to the shop, and do I want to, like, miss out just in case? So I just went onto the website, ordered the stuff, and it came to work at lunchtime today. But it looks awesome. They cover a different array of the Shonen Jump properties. So you've got like some Dragon Ball stuff in there, some One Piece stuff, Kinnikuman, and just a Bleach, and a few other like things that have been in that publication over the years. And yeah, some of the designs are cool. I mean, a few more of them are a bit more on the nose than I like.
Yeah. Which
I think the Nintendo ones were mostly good for.
Yeah.
But the ones I picked up I was quite happy with. I picked up 3 Dragon Ball ones.
Yep.
Which were, there's a cool Vegeta one, and it's early Vegeta when he's still got his tail.
Okay.
I picked up one with Goku and Frieza squaring up.
Yeah.
And I picked up, and this is the main reason I wanted this. Main reason, Yamcha in his Yamcha hole.
I was just looking at that one. 'Cause I'm on the website right now. It looks amazing.
It's so good.
Is it what, creator Yamcha?
Yes.
Yeah, Yamcha-san. Yeah, this is great.
So yeah, that was worth the price of admission. And then when I was on the site, also comic related, I picked up. There's a really cool Ant-Man one where he's stood on the stick of Lollipop, and it's got a cool design because it doesn't really fully draw to itself. There's no massive logo saying Ant-Man or Marvel or anything, and those are the type of designs that I like. But yeah,
that's cool. Yeah,
I would definitely check it out.
Cool. I completely forgot about the Marvel one. I meant to go into the shops and take a look, but
yeah,
hopefully they still have some available. I'll check online.
They sound cool. I picked up one of the Nintendo ones. I got the Pikachu one last time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Pikachu sprite picture one where it's like blown up, and it just says a quote, I think from Pokemon Yellow, when you end up with Pikachu, and then on the back it's got Pikachu's tail. But before we actually move on to the comics and start discussing what we actually picked up on Free Comic Book Day and elsewhere, I just want to mention one more thing about Free Comic Book Day. Alexa, play No Scrubs by TLC.
You lot went wild on Alexa. Like, I thought I was looking through her. Just to make this clear to the audience. Greg and a bunch of my other guests who came were thoroughly drunk and kept going up to my Alexa Dot or my Amazon Dot, which I'd set up to play Spotify, just, to fill the room with something. And it wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't working when they shouted, or you just didn't like shouting at Alexa. So one by one, they kept going up and whispering into the Echo Dot, like the songs that they wanted to listen to. It was super creepy, and I didn't like it. And I had to go or I went through the search history or the query history on my app the next day, and there's some terrible stuff. You guys have got terrible minds. I don't know what you were thinking. Stuff that can't be shared.
It's just what
the
we
real
wanted to
question
listen
is,
to.
How many sex toys ended up in your mail the next day?
12, Leon. 12. I have a query in the history that says 12 dildos, and I was listening to Greg when he did it, so I went into my inbox and deleted them straight away. But there were 12 dildos for a brief amount of time in my checkout. Thanks to
One
Greg.
for each month.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, there was no variation, so that doesn't really help unless you wear them out once a month.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
At least we didn't check out,
Alexa, one click.
I'm wearing headphones, guys. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, but someone's going to listen back to this.
That's true.
Anyway, yeah, so that was Free Comic Book Day.
Comics and dildos.
Well, just comics and then getting drunk and just playing games with Alexa, but yeah.
Very briefly, just to say, because we went to Gosh, we went to Orbital in Leicester Square, and we went to Forbidden Planet, and all three were top-notch. Like, they had really cool staff, they had a really cool arrangement of, things to see and do for Free Comic Book Day, handed out all the nice comics. The kids were loving it seems, so, overall a really good event.
Yeah, there were a few people in cosplay, not just the staff, who were really good at Orbital, but also there were like kids in cosplay, parent and kid cosplay, just teens and millennials in cosplay, and it was nice, people just like embracing their love. And one of my favorite things about Free Comic Book Day is not just that it gets people out and into comic book shops and is good for the businesses, but also it gets to be this sort of almost soft celebration, because it's not really a big event like a Comic-Con or something where everybody's huddled in one place. So instead you're just walking around central London and you're seeing like the Avengers or the London Avengers walking about the streets with like bento boxes and stuff whilst they're getting their lunch. And it's nice to see, and especially when you walk by people and you see, oh, they've got an Orbital bag, or that person's got a Forbidden Planet bag, that person's got a Gosh bag, and so on. It's this cool sort of unspoken camaraderie that that we share across wordlessly.
It's got this kind of fringe festival thing about it.
Yeah.
Like if there was a con going on at the same time, this is like the sort of the fringe con kind of thing. It was nice. It was cool. I enjoyed it, and it's nice. It's a cool day out, and I think I want to make it a thing now. London every time for Free Comic Book Day.
Plus, we should shout out your guardian angel in Forbidden Planet, who was finding comics that you couldn't find for you.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Comic finder guy, the librarian, as I'm now going to refer to him. He, I was looking for a copy of Snagglepuss. The latest issue of Snagglepuss, and I couldn't find it anywhere because Forbidden Planet London, for me, it's confusing because it's really big, and the comic store in my city is very small, and I know where everything is, and I was all disorientated and whatever, and he managed to find it on the shelf for me and gave it to me, which was really cool of him. He's like, oh, you're looking for this one? Just sort of like overheard me like saying I can't find it to the guys, and then he just sort of like passed it to me. I was like, oh, cool, thank you. So yeah. He was cool. He saved my life. Thank you.
That was Ace Comicals payback karma that Rahul put in the air last year when he helped out that kid who was looking for one of the comics he couldn't get his hands on.
Oh yeah, because I had 3 copies of Rick and Morty and they wanted them, so I gave a couple away.
Yeah.
But that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah. It's what it's all about. Making sure that, everyone's looked after and everyone gets what they wanted out of the day, and it's fun for everyone. It's fun for all of us. So, on to the comics. The first one on my list is one that I actually picked up on Free Comic Book Day, and this is a book called Relay. Now, the main reason I was excited about this book was the fact that it had Donny Cates' name on it, and that it was published on Aftershock Comics, which are the same people that are responsible for Cold War, which is the other book that I enjoy. And yeah, they say the excitement came from seeing Donny Cates' name attached to it, and the fact that he is on sort of like joint writing duties, I think. So this story, just to sort of like give you an idea of what it is, it sort of like oozes cult psychedelic sci-fi. It's like 2001 Space Odyssey and Zardoz type stuff, kind of like in a swirl, like sort of like, like that 70s psychedelic sci-fi sort of movies that you get, that you may have watched, like that sort of genre. And the cover of this book. This is Relay 0, by the way, so this is the 0 issue. The first issue comes out in July, I believe. The cover of this book is what appear to be two black doors either side of an opening into space, and there's a craft with the light kind of reflecting off it and shining, which is kind of like a theme throughout the art in this book, actually, that they do some really cool things with light. The artwork on a whole is beautiful, and it's high detail, and it's dense with lines, but only fine lines. There's some wonderful work with light, as I've just mentioned, and the way that it's been coloured and captured. So like they do things where, like, when the sun's rising, you'll get, like, you know, like the flare or the reflection of light.
Oh, the God rays.
God rays or flare, like when you add flare to something, to a photograph or something like that. And the bright lights actually feel bright, and like if I'm staring at the page, they feel like, you know, it kind of makes me squint when I'm looking at the page, even though there's no actual light coming off it. And yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful book for starters, and there's some really good points in panels where they give you an idea of the vastness of the space and the sort of emptiness of the world that I want to call him protagonist, but he's not really. Our guy, I guess, has landed on. And yeah, it's interesting characters and world designs, and things seem very otherworldly and removed from our experience. So this is what makes it psychedelic in a way, because it's so out there and so removed from anything that is in our current experience as in, like, aesthetically. It's not really, how do I put this? It's not hard sci-fi, and it's not, it's not mechanical or organic. It's just like almost both. Like, the when the guy lands, the craft that he lands in to kind of like spread knowledge on this planet, it's like a seed, and it looks like it's made of stone, but then it seems very fleshy when he gets out of it. And it's just this odd combination. And when he gets out, he pulls something out of his navel, like a tube, like he's joined to it with an umbilical cord, this craft that he was travelling in. And it's really weird, but really cool at the same time. And there's some cool scenes where they actually, like, I keep mentioning the word psychedelic, but there's a point where they actually use drugs in the story, and there's some cool panels and some cool things they do with the drug trip. So I'll give you a synopsis from the actual website. So we've got the writer, Zach Thompson, artist, Andy Clark. Donny Cates is also helped with the story, so him and Zach Thompson wrote the story. We've got colorist Dan Brown, and the regular cover artist is Andy Clark, so the main artist for the book. A perfect future of intergalactic travel and community. Every newly discovered planet is unified culturally through a monolithic structure known as the Galaxy Relay. Although the towering monument is meant to inspire conformity of ideas, technology and progress, many resent the foreign structure. Jad Carter, a Relay employee, must keep the peace and act as an emissary to new civilizations even. But when he finds the Relay's mythological creator, Hank Donaldson, his idea of reality and the universe shatters. Equal parts Fifth Element and Philip K. Dick. Relay is an exploration of monoculture, identity, and the deceptive nature of legend set in a thriving future where humanity forcibly assimilates new worlds. And that is the sort of like a official synopsis or blurb, if you like, from the Aftershock website, which kind of describes it pretty well and better than I could. So that's why I've chosen to use that one. It's it's a great story, and it's set me up for wanting more, definitely. And there's a lot in there to love about this book. Did you guys actually manage to pick this one up?
I don't think so.
I think I've got a copy, but I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, you should read it. It's great. There's some actually quite obvious nods to 2001 in there, with the structure of the galactic relay. It's this big black monolith.
Yeah, because as you were talking about it, I was getting some 2001 shades, but also the way you spoke about the spacecraft made me recall the future space scenes from The Fountain, which are not exactly what you described, but are that different type of futuristic sci-fi where it's not mechanical and it's not really biomechanical, but instead it's this weird sort of naturey, futuristic type thing.
And it's good to see. It's the way this plays out as well. Like the guy that lands on the planet, you think he's coming with a message of progress, and you think he's coming with a message of peace. But as you'll soon learn, he's not as, I want to say, benevolent, but I don't think that's the correct word. Basically, it's not what it seems, and it's almost as if it's less about choice and more about force, which is what the Aftershock synopsis gets across. And it's a cool book, and it's going to be a cool series and a cool thing to read and think about, I think, when we get issue 1. I believe we are due issue 1 on it says July 2018 here on the Aftershock website. So yeah, sometime in July, look out for Relay number 1. And I think it's on to Ray for another one from the Free Comic Book Day list.
Indeed, yeah. I was going to talk about something that I picked up called Crush. Again, like I often do, I just picked it up because I like the art style on the cover. It's very cute, very like chibi-ish. I don't know how to describe it. It's very cute, but also it reminds me a little bit of Giant Days. I don't know if I've talked about that in the past. Just cartoony loveliness. And it's about this guy called Jorge Ruiz, and we see him. It's set in, I think, what would be high school, so our secondary school. I guess they're around 14 or 15 years old, these kids. So it starts off with him in a school bus, just observing all the kids around him, all on their phones and joking about on the school bus. And he's a lot bigger than the rest of them. And so throughout this whole comic, it's about him being slightly out of place, but also because he's the big guy, nobody fully understands who he is. They find him a bit intimidating and a little bit scary, but he's actually, got a heart of gold, and he tends to stick up for the ones who are being bullied. He's called the sheriff by a couple of other characters at some point in the book. And it's about him and his relationship with this girl called Jasmine Duong. And as the title implies, it's all about this crush that he has on her that he doesn't fully understand. And this is issue 1 of however many it's going to be. So it's the beginnings of that relationship. But it's a cool comic because it's kind of like idealized secondary school or high school or whatever, where everyone's perfect and everyone's like this perfect archetype, but is generally quite nice in a way that I certainly didn't experience when I was in secondary school. So in a way, it's like really lovely to see all these, like wonderful, positive, happy, fun, just, not as depressed as me and my friends were when we were this age. Like seeing this in a comic is both really sweet and also kind of infuriating at the same time. Because like, why wasn't my life like this at this age?
I think I was going to say to you, I think different places in the world, school experience is very different. I think in Western culture, the way we experience school, high school especially, in the UK and the US, is fairly different to the rest of the world. I think it's cliquier and there's more bullying and everything else. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think this is the impression that I get anyway.
Possibly. I mean, I was just trying to express my frustration at how like wonderfully idealized the characters in this school are.
Yeah.
Because they're always like looking out for each other and they always seem to be getting along really well, and it's kind of nice. And I think the point of this is going to be like the minutiae of crush politics, because we've got obviously Jorge and his the beginnings of his crush with Jasmine. But then it's also like we see two of his friends who are like the bickering non-couple, where it's clear that they kind of like each other because they're always like hanging about and being slightly mean to each other. But the girl actually has a boyfriend, and the the bestie guy friend that she has kind of like projects not being able to deal with it by pretending to be sickened by it, or maybe he actually is. But like all these little things that you notice when you have these interactions when you're growing up, and it's kind of nice. Like it's kind of filled with all these different types of interactions. And like I really like the artwork. The one thing I noticed about this, which I don't know if I've picked up on before in any other comics, but like there's a lot of white space. There's not a lot of detail in the backgrounds. There's like lots and lots of panels where it's literally just the characters and the text boxes and a white background. And it's kind of refreshing because it means that if this is going to be a book that's all about the minutiae of relationships between these kids, it does really focus on the characters. It focuses on just the way they're standing and the way they hold themselves in front of each other and the way they look and the things they say. And it's kind of nice. It draws all the attention and the focus onto them. I really like it. I think I'll pick up on the next one. I'm curious to see where it's going to go, and it's just adorable. And I like these kind of adorable, cute books. So that's Crush. It's by I didn't mention who it's by, Svetlana Shmakova, I believe. And I think she's both the writer and the artist on it. Colouring assistant, Melissa McCommon, and lettering by Juyeon Lee. And yeah, so issue number 1 was given away as Free Comic Book Day. It's also she's the creator of comics called Awkward and Brave, which look similar in their presentation, in their cuteness. So if that floats your boat, then check those out as well.
Cool. So on from there, we move on to Berlin, which is one that we got on Free Comic Book Day, another one. But this one actually, this is like a reprint of something that's already been published. So, Leon, do you want to charge away on this one?
Yeah. So, Berlin is... this issue that came out on Free Comic Book Day is a reprint of the first issue that was part of the first volume, which are referred to as books. And this is the first book, which is Berlin, City of Stones. So it's drawn and illustrated by Jason Lutz. And I believe he originally started on these in like the mid-90s. It was like 96, but then they were republished as trades in 2000. Well, this particular book.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is I believe the backstory of this is that it was planned as to be like 24 magazines, but then reduced to 22. And bear in mind, this started in 96. 22 has not even come out yet. It's scheduled to come out in the autumn of this year. So this has been a labour of love for this guy.
It has, and it's the amount of meticulous research that he does and everything else.
Yeah.
So Jason Lutz is, as Leon mentioned, is like a bit of a one-man band on this thing. He's written it and he's illustrated it. And he's done such meticulous research, and he's planned this out. And it has been 20 years in the making, and it will be finished this September, which is when the final third volume comes out as paperback, and they're doing a hardback edition of all of it, which, upon reading the Free Comic Book Day first issue, I plan to pick up.
Yeah, definitely, because, I'll give some backstory. So, this first book, the whole series is about Berlin in the run-up to World War II. And this first book is more focused on the Berlin starts off in September 1928. And we start with Martha Müller, who's an art student. And she's on a train and she meets this journalist called Kurt Severing. And in this first issue, they spend some time talking, and he offers to help her out and show her around when they get to the city. And you get the seeds of like a friendship or a relationship just in these interactions here, because you have this device where you have them speaking, and then you have sort of voiceover or thought bubble from the future, sort of written as like a diary entry. And I think it's really effective here, just in these 24 pages, in sort of describing or more so displaying what the decline of the Weimar Republic was like at this time. And like all the differences in between how people have interacted with the city, because Kurt mentions how it's from someone who's from a smaller city or town, Berlin might be overwhelming to them. And when they first get off the train and arrive there, Martha is sort of taken aback when she sees a beggar who was a veteran, and she remarks that where she's from, veterans are looked after, and Kurt remarks that how odd science is that for the first time in history we're able to do the most damage in a small amount of time to so many people, but at the same time we now have the ability to save people who once would have just been corpses. So you're early on already getting the sort of beginnings of this friendship relationship and how these two people are going to bounce off each other.
Even from the fact that when they're first on the train, the two of them, they're sharing a carriage, and the journalist had left the original carriage he was in because he didn't enjoy the company there. He didn't agree with the people in there, and he went into this one, and you kind of get the idea that there's already this divide between the sort of encroaching fascist fist, if you like, and the sort of the liberal side of Berlin, the arts, the culture, what Berlin was before it became a fascist stronghold, basically, during the time of the Nazis. And you get that feeling when they're sitting on the train and he remarks about the brown shirt sat opposite him in the carriage, asleep.
Yeah.
You already kind of get that feeling of the chemistry there when he starts thumbing through her sketchbook and things like that. And yeah, it's the artwork in it is really, really, really beautiful. It's
oh yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's lines, but it's very bold, very clean lines. There's not too much detail going on, which I think works to its strength because it's detailed where it needs to be.
Yeah, I think I would say I can understand what you're saying. I think there's definitely detail in the architecture and the backgrounds, I would say.
Yeah.
But then I would say the people are, because there's no shading really on the people. It's sort of not flat, but it's very line dependent, and it gives everybody these lines in their faces that really sort of bring out their personality.
Yeah, definitely. And like even when it sort of like intersects to other characters, and you just kind of like get snippets of what their day's going like and things like that, where it shows you the signalman controlling the road. And he's thinking about what he's going to get for lunch, and he's remarking about the people driving and things like that, and how he's he's okay. I guess this is his job, and this is how like his thought process when he's controlling the traffic and things like that. Feels powerless, but also powerful at the same time.
Yeah, it's like sort of his coping mechanism to keep himself sane.
Yeah. And he's constantly like in between each thought. It's constantly like, am I going to get an apple today, or am I going to get potatoes, or am I going to get? And one of the things I picked up on that was it's a bit of comedy in there actually, because he's praying for something to help him go to the toilet basically, which was kind of funny. But yeah, it's like a really nice setup, and it's a really nice exploration of that time period. Yeah. From this first issue, and I really want this hardback when it drops. Really do.
Even the way that the speech bubbles and the text in them are done, where all the lettering is like normal. It's not all capitals.
Yeah.
It's normal, and then all the sort of diary entry voiceover is done cursive.
Yeah.
To really instantly give you the visual difference about when this particular thing is being said.
Yeah.
And I think it's really effective.
Yeah. So, it's, the short way of describing this book is that it is, it looks through ordinary people's eyes to observe the transformation of the German city of Berlin from a liberal metropolis into a fascist stronghold. And, it's a really, really, I think it's quite an important piece of work, and it's quite a beautiful piece of work when you look at the artwork in it and everything else. And yeah, it's something to look forward to. And in September is when they're going to release the deluxe hardcover and the final paperback for the trilogy. And yeah, deluxe hardback's going on my shopping list because this is something that I feel like I need to own.
And that's released by Drawn and Quarterly.
Yes. So. Yeah,
I was going to say I really like some of the offerings that Drawn and Quarterly have. I think we talked about it last year with the other free comic book episode we did. And I think there was something I was looking forward to called Baking with Kafka, which is now out. And they do a lot of these sort of weighty but also kind of comic, like in the comedy sense.
Yeah.
Those kind of works where they blend that thing, and like you said, if it feels quite important, I think they have that kind of slightly more literary aspiration. I think they do some really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to make you all aware as well, Jason Lutz is also responsible for a comic or a once weekly comic strip called Jar of Fools, which is the story of a tormented magician named Ernie Weiss, believed based on Harry Houdini, and his brother Howard, and it's this guy's story and how he struggles to get himself back on track and find himself through the guidance of another magician called Al Flosso. And it's another cool one to pick up, I think, if you like your Harry Houdini stuff and things like that. So yeah, Jar of Fools, that's called. Moving on from there is one that I read that I picked up. It's a new book, and this was released on Image, and it is a book called Death or Glory. Now, this one, I'm going to go straight in, again, with the description from the Image website. So, meet Glory, raised off the grid in a convoy amid truckers. The last men and women fighting for true freedom on the American open road. Now, in order to pay for her beloved dying father's surgery, Glory has 3 days to pull off 4 dangerous cross-country heists with mob killers, crooked cops, and a psycho ex-husband, all out to bring her in or die trying. This new ongoing series by New York Times bestseller author Rick Remender and legendary French superstar Bengal brings you a high-speed chase across the American West that examines our dwindling freedoms and the price paid by those who fight for an untethered life. This is a special double-sized first issue with 40 pages of story. So yeah, issue 1 was 40 pages, a bit chunky. And it's a really cool read with some really cool artwork. It's high octane. It's adrenaline. I loved it. Writing is by Rick Remender. You've got the artist and cover artist Bengal, and there's variant covers by Duncan Fregredo and James Harron. And I've got one of the variant covers. So the cover I have is the Fregredo cover, and it has Glory sort of standing as if you're looking up at her from the ground, about to be executed, and she's got this kind of like snarl on her face. She's holding the gun down, and you can see up the barrel into the sky with the sun shining. And coming from the barrel of the gun, you've got all these like miniature cop cars sort of like falling and crumbling, and police falling out of the cars and things like that. So already you get the idea of this kind of like high octane motor chase story that this thing is. So the art inside the book, it aims for realism, but it maintains an edge of cartoon abstraction to its depiction of the worlds. And it strikes a really cool balance with this, because it's not too far in either direction. So it's just far enough that it has the expression, and is able to convey emotion and things like that easily. But it's also, to the point where sometimes you don't even need speech bubbles. There's some really good silent sections in this, but it also has the realism where it needs it, and it's conservative with detail where it needs to be, but also detailed enough and exaggerated enough in places to complement the script and elements of the action that happen during the book. There's some great work here with facial expressions. Now, you'll hear me talk a lot on this podcast about facial expressions. I love facial expressions in comics, especially when they're done really well, and to a point where they make me laugh, or I'm able to see what that person's feeling without having to read their thoughts, if you catch my drift. Like, there's no need for a thought bubble or anything like that above it. And especially toward the end of the book, actually, is one of my favourite parts. So there's a great sequence of panels near the end, and we see sort of like Glory's face just sort of drop through several panels, and it's brilliant. There's a really nice double page spread towards the middle of the book, where we've got like this beautiful scene where she's like stepping out of the garage, and it's just, it works nicely because it's a double page spread, and she's looking out, and out of the garage door you've just got like an expanse and a bit of a horizon and things like that. You can, with the horizon and things like that, with the way they do this, is some great colour work. So it's warm versus cold, and there's a brilliant set of silent pages that I mentioned before that are framed in cold tones, which are, it's like the start of, it's like, because she's about to do these heists and she's preparing for it, and it's her coming to terms with what she has to do, and it's all framed in cold tones, and it's in the bathroom, and I won't spoil it too much, but it's great how it plays out across these silent panels. And again, it's in expression, and it's in the characters' actions rather than in the words, and it's just beautiful. And there's the panels in this book are borderless as well, which is another nice touch. And so are the speech bubbles. Now, I'm seeing this in quite a few places now, where you've got sort of like borderless panels and bubbles. And because there's no hard line there, it doesn't, it feels like it's all, I mean, obviously comics feel homogenous. They feel like one piece when you're reading it and looking at it. But when you look at a piece of art like this and there's no hard lines on it, there's something about that just makes it even more complete and come together even better, and stitches it together a bit more neatly, you know? Because everything just kind of just feels like it's all one, and it's not separate elements placed together. It feels like it is one single element. Well, in more of a sense than it would if there were borders there. And yeah, all in all, this is just a really great book, and I don't think I actually have a negative thing to say about this. This is something that this is one of those books where I can unashamedly love it and you know, like be outright, you know, yeah, this is great and I want more, and I love the story and it's high octane, high action, and it's just, yeah, I don't have a single criticism for that book. And I want you two to pick it up and read it.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah, so that's Death or Glory, and that's on Image Comics, and that was May 2nd, 2018, so that was first week of May, so that one's worth checking out, so go pick it up. And that brings us on to you again, Ray, for DAYGLOAHOLE?
DAYGLOAHOLE. And I've been racking my brains trying to think about how to present this one, because I'm looking through my notes that I scribbled down while I was reading it, and, you know, I've given it a couple of reads, and I have written down some gibberish. Like, it feels like rereading it back to myself. It feels like I wrote it half asleep. And that may be true. I don't think it's true. So I don't really know where to begin. So, okay, DAYGLOAHOLE. It's by Ben Passmore, who's the dude we've talked about in the past. He wrote a comic that Leon presented called Your Black Friend, which, you know, we've all sung the praises of. So this one, it's post-apocalyptic, and the tagline that I found from Ben Passmore's website is, "The world has ended, and we're all still a bunch of jerks," which I think is a really succinct way of describing this comic. It's really colourful in, like, this really 90s neon vomit sort of way, but imagine if, like, all the gack and gross stuff from, you know, 90s neon vibrancy had been left to rot for the last 30 years, and then it still maintains all those colours, but is all, like, dulled and gross and, like, covered in muck at the same time. That's what this comic feels like. It feels like this grungy, colourful, post-apocalyptic environment. And we're basically following two different people. A guy called No Limits, who, as the website describes him, a battle-hardened train hopper. And the second guy who we cover, which I was struggling to understand who he was while I was reading it, and then I've since discovered that it's meant to be Ben Passmore running around in his underwear and just like a long trench coat. And it's basically him dealing with the post-apocalyptic scenario, trying to survive, and dealing with his porn addiction because it prevents him from being able to connect with people. And that's it in a nutshell. It's just... and I say I don't want to use the word just, because that limits it. But that seems to be what it's going for. It's giving Ben Passmore himself an opportunity to enact out all this nihilism and the cynicism, but then also have an outlet for his, you know, like, it's immature, and then he can follow up with a treatise on feminism and capitalism and porn addiction, just through the lens of this really bizarre and sickening world that he's constructed. Like, I'm trying to look through my notes. It's super irreverent, and I think a lot of the stuff that he's saying is really interesting, and the politics of what he's talking about is stuff that really interests me, but it's like staggered and shuffled in between some really immature and disgusting stuff, which is really entertaining. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's really funny and really good and really violent.
But, like, with Ben Passmore, isn't, like, through his previous work and things like that, isn't he kind of, like, his thing is his punk sensibilities in the way that he does stuff? Yeah.
I would say punk is a very good way to describe this. Like, I'm trying to find a way to describe the artwork as well. It's like, so I mentioned how it's all coloured, and that runs through the entire thing. Like, everything's tinged in this strange, muddied green and purple and yellow, like, desert, like, psychedelic desert environment. And everything's written in, like, his scribbled handwriting. Sorry, you were going to say, Greg?
I was going to say, is everything supposed to be irradiated?
It feels that way, yeah. It definitely feels that. That's what I was trying to get at with the, you know, the neon gone wrong thing, which I really like. I really dig it. And the panel construction is really interesting because it's very structured in that almost every panel is a square or a rectangle, but then the arrangement of them all is very scattershot. So you can have a page made full of squares that all fill up all the space entirely, but they have you have a top row full of very tiny squares which flash between different scenarios, and then you have a big rectangle followed by 3 smaller ones. Like, it's a very interesting, frenetic vibe, and then it's when the action ramps up, it suddenly throws all these lines and curves, and the panels start encroaching upon each other, and then you have like circles like coming in when he's doing an aside glance, and it does this thing where every so often he'll like turn to the camera, to the audience, and break the fourth wall, but he'll acknowledge it, and you're never quite sure if he's actually addressing us or if his character within the comic has some level of psychosis where he thinks he's talking to us, but he isn't really. Like, it's really interesting because he clearly is talking to us as the author. He's talking to us and he's trying to get his expressions across, but then he dismisses it in universe because nobody's really listening to this guy. It's so interesting, and it's so dense, and I feel like I even though I've been talking for a few minutes, I feel like I still don't know where to begin, and I really want you guys to check it out because especially you, Greg, I think it'll appeal to your particular anger at the world. I think he shares a lot of that with you. Yeah, and I think you'll be doing like a mini fist pump on every other page. Yeah.
It does sound very much like my sort of thing, and when you showed me the cover and everything else, it was like, yeah, I need this. I do need to pick it up. I just keep forgetting to pick it up,
Well, yeah, there's always time, and I'm sure you'll be able to find it, or you can order it online. But yeah, I would highly recommend this one, and I hope I've done it justice. I think I'd like you guys to have a look and maybe help talk me through the things that I've missed in here, because there's just a lot going on, and it's just bonkers, and I really like it. Yeah, but I don't know why.
So yeah, that is something I want to check out. So that's DAYGLOAHOLE, which I like the name actually. I was just sort of like musing on it before the show, thinking what DAYGLOAHOLE could mean, and I'm thinking he's describing the world as an asshole, which the world sometimes is, and since the apocalypse or whatever, it's now Dayglow because it's irradiated, so DAYGLOAHOLE, and that appealed to me.
I think you're onto something there. Yeah. I think that's 100% correct. That's exactly what he's trying to express.
Yeah, so that's DAYGLOAHOLE. On from there, we move on to something I just want to mention briefly, because we've talked about it previously on the show, and we've mentioned before this book, and it was one that I think we had picked out from the list of things to look forward to.
Right.
Yep, and I think it was anyway. And it's called Hungry Ghosts. We've now had Hungry Ghosts issue 4, so that makes it a complete series. And what a bang this one went out with. That's the main reason I want to talk about it, because wow. Final issue, probably the best one of the 4. My sort of like not so well hidden main reason for talking about it as well is the fact that it's got one of my favourite artists on it, Francesco Francavilla, who is the man you may know from Afterlife with Archie. Yeah, he does some fantastic artwork, and he's one of my favourite comic artists right about now for the way that he draws and the way that he illustrates things. And with this one, so it's a really great exploration of horror, and like different stories will be scary for different reasons, and all of them are connected by food. So that was the whole gist of this thing. Was it was like an anthology of horror stories, all of them connected by a theme: food and hunger, and greed and behaviour revolving around that kind of, the shortcomings of man, basically. And yeah, I don't want to. I don't know. Can I talk about this without spoiling it too much for you guys? Because I know you're probably going to want to read it. But yeah, there's some beautiful artwork, especially in the Francavilla tale, and it's one worth picking up. So maybe wait for it to be collected and get all of it together, because it is great. It's a great little series, and I just wanted to get it in there because it had finished and Francavilla worked on it. And if anything, it's worth it just for that story. But yeah.
Because it's Francavilla and then also Irene Coe, who I think did a bunch of the Legend of Korra comics, and like she always does some really cool, sometimes a little bit risque artwork on Twitter. So I follow her on that. She's very cool. Yeah.
If you want a full list of credits, it's writer Anthony Bourdain and Joel Rose. We've got artist Francesco Francavilla and Irene Coe, as we've just mentioned. We've got colorist Jose Villarrubia and editor Karen Berger, because obviously this is her imprint Berger Books. And the cover artist is Paul Pope, and he's done us a Yuki Onna on the cover of this one. And the Yuki Onna is the subject of the first story in the book. So yeah. Definitely worth picking that one up. And actually wait for it to be collected into a trade and grab all four together, because it'll be one that would be worth having on your bookshelf. That was Hungry Ghosts. Leon, back round to you.
Yes, I'm going to speak about Strangers in Paradise 25. Written and drawn by Terry Moore. Out on his self-published on Abstract Studio, which he runs, and has come out this year. So this is a reprint of the first issue from earlier in the year. I believe it was out in January. And what it does, it's called Strangers in Paradise 25 because it's the 25th anniversary of the series starting. So, to go back, Strangers in Paradise is a property that I'd been aware of, but only really because I'd heard the name and I'd heard of Terry Moore, but I'd never really checked it out. And after reading this, I wanted to dig in because as we're currently on television anyway, we're in quite a big revival period where we're getting a lot of sort of old shows that finished are coming back. So had a couple like Gilmore Girls and Roseanne, Twin Peaks, and a bunch of other shows have come back after being off the air for a while. And this is a similar type of scenario where this, I mean, where do I start? Reading up on this series is wild. It's so wild. So it started off as like a sort of slice of life, and like love triangle type story with three lead characters. You had Kachu, who is one of the blonde of the two girls. You had Francine, who was sort of the brunette of the two girls, and then you had David, and you had this sort of odd sort of relationship that they had, and the different people would come in. It all sounded very soap opera. So that was volume 1. And then in volume 2, so volume 1 was 13 issues, and then in volume 2, Terry Moore decides, I'm going to make this even wilder, and adds in like this crazy like crime plot. So then what you have, so Kachu used to be what they refer to as a Parker girl. It was led by this character called Darcy Parker, and yeah, they were like a crime organization which infiltrated all these different branches of society, while also maintaining that sort of slice of life element. So it sounds like something that I want to go back and check out, and the collection of the first half of Volume 2 won an Eisner back in '96. But yeah, with this actual book, which comes out 10 years after the actual series ended in 2008, starting off the cover, because we need to talk about covers more, and I always forget, but with this cover, you have this new character, I believe, to the series called Ivy, and she's a blonde with wearing a headband and a winter coat. She's standing on a subway station platform, and there's all sorts of people, like kids, adults, people, looks like on the way to work or whatever, and they're all doing their thing, getting on a train that's just got on the platform, but everybody apart from her is wearing like a mask over their face. Not really a mask, it's just like a bit of material tied over, so they're all blinded, and I assume it's some sort of heavy-handed metaphor on the fact that nobody's seeing what's really going on in the background, and they're just going about their day, and they don't know what happens under the surface. But it's quite a cool sort of introduction into it, really, because the beginning starts with this guy who we later find out is attached to one of the main characters. His phone gets stolen by these kids, and he chases after them, and they're doing this thing where they will throw the phone to another person, and then these people split up, and then it happens again, and he sees a girl get the phone, she rips out the SIM card, drops the phone on the floor, disappears. And then he mentions to his girlfriend, who he sees doing like yoga or cooling down, and he says he's going to be late because some girl stole his SIM card, and then his girlfriend, who I believe is called Laura Higgs, and she's an aide to a general. But yeah, his girlfriend, she's like gets really intense when she's like, where he's like, describe the person who stole your phone, and he's like, he's basically saying, well, what does it matter? But she's like really belligerent, describe this person, and he describes the person, and she just ends the call. And if you've seen John Wick, where under concrete he has a bunch of weapons, it's kind of that scenario where she sort of has a bug out bag and just makes a mad dash for it. So then later on we get reintroduced. Oh yeah, this whole time, this character who broke the phone, who believe is called Ivy, she's basically, it seems like she's stalking this Higgs character. And then what happens midway through the book, we get reintroduced, well, for me, first time introduced, but reintroduced to the characters who are the leads of the comic, of the original Strangers in Paradise run. And spoilers for myself and all of you who have not read the original run, two of the main characters are living together, and I guess that's how they settled the love triangle. But what happens is that a conversation happens between one of the people who is also a Parker girl with one of the lead characters, Kachu, and they start talking about when the collider exploded, and it seems like in the not too distant past there's a Large Hadron Collider under Alaska, which they refer to as the Alaska Collider, and there was a disaster that happened where it exploded. And this is where this book starts to get like, okay, this isn't just a random little thing going on. This is big, and there's people on all different types of society, going all the way to the top. So you get a conspiracy which is laid out, and then we find out that Laura Higgs isn't who she says she is, and Ivy is actually in connection with the lead characters, and we start to go down this spiral. And I gotta say, what I really like with this and related to Berlin is that these are essentially, well, this is the new version, but these are essentially two comic books that found their feet and began in the 90s, done by one dude and featuring just pencils with no extra color. Sorry, well, pencils and ink, but no color. They're black and white. And I don't know, there's something about it where it sort of transports me back to some of the old comics I would pick up when I was a kid in the 90s that were, I think a lot of them were Dark Horse, but yeah, they weren't DC or Marvel. And I always used to find them like really, it was like seeing the next stage, because I read a lot of Batman and Spider-Man and Justice League, but then seeing books about adult things,
social commentary in a comic,
stuff like that.
I remember that
to blow my mind, because this was at the time the comics were in that, Marvel and DC were in that extreme phase where you had extreme, Lobo, Spawn, blah blah. Dark Horse as well. But then there were certain issues where you're just like, what is this? What is this? This is, no one else knows what this thing is, but it's so different and stylistic. And this sort of does bring me back to those days of like being in the library and just finding this odd book and reading into it. But like, from what I can tell with this Strangers in Paradise 25 is that I think it's Terry Moore's Dark Tower in a way, because it sounds like he's folding in characters from his other works, which are Echo, Rachel Rising, Motor Girl, and I believe those characters are going to show up in this story. So I think, as well as it being the 25th anniversary of this book, I think he's using it as a chance to not only revisit these characters in 2018 and what they'd be doing and how they'd be reacting to like life sort of now, but also finding a way to bring in his other characters and seeing how they would bump off each other. But I mean, it's been a good free comic book day for me, because the books that I've picked up and read so far have been ones where when I saw the titles on there, I was like, yeah, I want to get that. I don't know what it's about, but I want to get that. I got a vague idea. I think I've heard a little bit about this thing before. I want to get that. And they've worked out really well, because I now want to go back to Volume 1 and read Strangers in Paradise, because it kind of seems like Riverdale, the TV show, the comic, but not high school. And I'm here for that. So, I would recommend checking out 25, Strangers in Paradise 25. It's, I think, like other books we've read, like Number One of a Bullet, there's definitely this feeling of like the hubris of like man and science being used against us type thing. But then it also has this element of this shady underground of like female crime syndicate, and just reading up on some of the stuff that's happened in the past of this, where like it's like a soap opera of different people killing other people, incest, love triangles, rectangles, pentagons. Like, I'm into it. I'm into it.
Leon likes his soap opera.
I think that's what's weird. Like, I actually hate soap opera, but I like primetime soap opera for some reason.
Just imagining Leon
to it.
Sitting there in the duvet with like loads of junk food, watching his telenovelas or something, you know. Just
watching my stories.
Yeah.
Well, I think comics do the thing that soap operas offer, but in a much better like format for us, because it's a little more even though it's like campy and possibly a bit trashy, it's more considered than a daily soap opera would be. Like, you get to sit down and enjoy this thing that they've figured out the plan. Like, it takes a while to form a comic, And I had the same feeling with, I think, The Walking Dead. That was my version of a soap opera, even though I would never be caught dead watching a TV soap opera. But I can see why this would appeal. And I remember Strangers in Paradise being on our pull list a few months ago. But I didn't get to pick it up because it was out of the shops by the time I went in. And I was really pleased to see that this same issue was available for Free Comic Book Day. So, I'll be getting to this once that stack dwindles.
Yeah. And speaking of dwindling stacks, we're coming to the end. This is another one that I just wanted to mention briefly before we go into the big one that we all read. And this is Batman White Knight number 8, which is the conclusion to Batman White Knight. This is number 8 of 8. Oh my gosh. What a conclusion this is. Again, this is just something that I wanted to... I just wanted to draw attention to it, that it's finished, and that if you are a tradesperson, now is the time when it drops as a trade. And this is primarily the work of one man, writing, drawing, all of it. Artist and writer Sean Murphy, and I think he's had some assistance from Matt Hollingsworth. Now, this is this short miniseries, this 8-issue series, has delivered an interesting and different take on a Batman story that we've probably already read at some point or other. These stories that examine the relationship between the Batman and the Joker, and examine the Batman's own. They are critical of the Batman as they are of the Joker. That they examine them in a way that they're almost as bad as each other. And this book, it does that. But rather than just being a deconstruction and exploration of the two characters, it actually throws a new light on it, and it explores things from a different angle to what previous books that have done this have done. And I think it throws the spotlight of throws the spotlight of the current decade over this relationship between the Batman and the Joker, and what this might actually mean, for Gotham and everything else, and the way these two characters interact, and how they are almost as bad as each other, and how, at the crux of it all, they're the same man, almost. And yeah, it just does it really, really well, and it delivered an unexpected ending. It's at the beginning of the series. It's not where I thought this series was going, certainly. As I say, it was a wild ride, and it's just been so different to any other Batman book I've read. And it's gripping, and it's satisfying, and it has a very satisfying ending, and it's a self-contained 8-issue miniseries, and it's another good one for the shelf, along with Hungry Ghosts. So I'd recommend picking that up if you like your Batman tales. I'm not going to go too much into the story, because to try and describe what happens in this issue would spoil the previous 7. Because there's been some big reveals, and some twists, and some turns, and some, sucker punches, and I don't want to ruin that for you. I want you to experience all of that. I want you to take the full roller coaster when you read this. So yeah, Batman White Knight. Leon, I think you started this, didn't you?
Yes. I can't remember how far I got, but it is one on the never-ending list of must-complete lists.
Well, there's only 8 of them, and it's finished now, so it's all there.
Yeah,
for
which is merciful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mercifully, there's only 8.
Yeah, this is definitely a book read, like the volume read. I'll
I think
get to that.
I think actually, in hindsight, I think it will read better as a completed graphic novel when you've got it all
Which
together
works
in
well.
one place. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I enjoyed reading it monthly, but in in hindsight, it will read better as a complete piece. I think it's great. I love it. 10 out of 10. Anyway, the one that we all picked up on Free Comic Book Day that we all read is a book called Barrier. Now, this is a book by Brian K. Vaughan, and we have artist Marcus Martin and Munster Vicente. And I believe this book is to be published weekly. There are only 5 of them, and the only way to get this is in print at your local comic book shop. That's right. You can't buy it digitally. There's no plans currently to collect it. The only way to pick this up right now is to walk into your comic book shop and grab one off the shelf. How cool is that? I thought that was a nice touch anyway. I'm sure it's very... I'm sure a lot of you probably find it a little bit... how do I put it? Inconvenient, maybe? But I think that's the point. I think the whole point of this is to get you to get up and get out and go to your LCS and support your LCS. And one of the most striking things about it, and one of the first things you'll notice, other than the beautiful purple cover, which is a stark, sort of
like
desolate
dusk landscape, isn't it?
Dusty landscape. Yeah, it is. It's a dusk landscape, and it's the border between the US and Mexico, I believe.
And
checkpoint, it's a checkpoint
entry.
or crossing station. Yeah. And it's nighttime, and it's just this plain, desolate desert landscape, punctuated by a fence and a checkpoint. And it's horizontal. It's in landscape, not portrait. And when you open the book, the rest of the book's in landscape as well, which is one of the most striking things about it, and one of the first things you'll notice. And I don't know what you guys thought about that, but for me, I was kind of into it. It was, it's not exactly easy to read, because I was having to sort of open it like a calendar, and sort of hold it like a calendar in front of me, like I'm looking at a centerfold in a cartoon or something, like that's how I was having to read it. But it was great. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the difference of reading it, and I think for the way this book is, and for the way the art's presented, and for what it's trying to do, and some of what it's trying to get across through the panels, I think that works better in landscape. And I think it's better for it. Because I think it does this thing where it wants to communicate empty space and horizons. There's a lot of, if you'll notice when you look at the horizontal panels, there's a lot of sort of like long landscape, this is the horizon type stuff going on.
Yeah, and there's a lot of traversing distances as well that gets expressed through that. Yeah.
And it's a great way to do it. So, Ray, impressions?
Yeah, I really liked it. It's got, like, we talk about TV shows again in reference to comics. Awesome cold open in this comic. Like, the way that the title screen, as it were, comes up a few pages in, it got me hooked. And it's quite an oversized comic. Like, it's over the usual 28 pages. To touch on what you were saying about, like, the panel arrangement because of the landscape arrangement, there's some stuff towards the end where, how do you say, we see this extended sequence of these two leads, and the environments that they're both in, but they share this same, like, they're traversing this landscape, but they share this same sky and the same nightscape, and that's expressed really well in this landscape portrait. We have the two environments on both sides, and then the sky in the middle, and that slowly dwindles.
Are you reading my notes?
May well be. I mean, it's one of those things that you can't help but notice.
Yeah,
and it is very striking. Like, it's one of those things that makes you realize how important or how much impact the panel arrangements can have on. If I was to talk about video games, I would talk about it in terms of, like, gameplay and narrative interaction, or like ludonarrative dissonance, to, quote unquote. That thing where playing with the page really adds something to the story, and this is one of those one of these comics which you can tell they've considered everything, and it's all done because they've made this initial choice to do it in landscape. It's very cool.
Yeah. Now the cool thing about this, about that sequence you've just mentioned, which I think we're jumping ahead by going on to it, but
sorry,
it's we've got these two characters either side of a border, and leading up to that, half of the book is in Spanish and half of the book is in English. And throughout the whole book, there's this theme communicated in the way that this book runs and the way it works, and that is the theme of a border or a barrier between two characters, between two objects, or two people. And because we keep flipping back and forth between one side of the border to the other, and it does these cool things when it introduces people and places, where it gives you a full page with their face and their name, and then it shows you where they are, kind of thing.
Yeah, like a dramatic freeze frame, which splashes their name and stuff behind them. It's very cinematic. But
this sequence of silent panels, where it shows you the passage of time as these two people go about their lives. One person is attempting to cross the border, and it shows you his struggle as he moves from place to place, and the other person is just going about her life. It's like, although they are both separated, the unifying factor between the two of them is that they share maybe a time zone, or you can see the sky above. For both of them, it's nighttime at the same time, it's daytime at the same time, and we're given this kind of passage of time that way, that they're both, although there is a barrier, although there is a border between the two of them, they are still experiencing time in the same way, and they are joined by that, which I think is what these 4 panels give. These 4, is it 4 pages?
What, towards the end?
That's what that gives to me anyway. That's what I like about it. That's what I love about it, the way that it sort of like marries that together and brings together, for me, what is an overarching theme throughout the whole book, a theme of barriers and borders, henceforth the name Barrier. Because half the book is a language barrier, isn't it?
Well, because there's lots of different types of barriers, because it also expresses just how dissimilar their circumstances are. So we've got the barrier of distance, we've got the literal wall between them, we've got the fact that he's trying to get somewhere and she isn't necessarily. She doesn't want to leave. Like, people express to her about how she should get out of her situation, she should leave this because she's a rancher, and there are some violent things happening around. And people keep telling her, you should get out of this situation. She's rooted herself in this place, whereas he's trying to escape into America.
Yes.
So their circumstances are different that way. She's isolated, whereas he's surrounded by people who are in the same dire straits as he is. And there's all these different things going on where it compares and contrasts, and they have things in common and things out of common. It's very clever.
And they are literal opposites on opposite sides of a fence. Yeah. And what I'll do is, because we've just been throwing words at you, what I'll do is I'll try and give you some kind of context by reading off the Image website. So, from the Eisner Award-winning team behind Private Eye, Barrier is an unconventional drama about violence, language, and illegal immigration, with a shocking sci-fi twist. After debuting on panelsyndicate.com, this critically acclaimed 5-part miniseries finally comes to print exclusively from Image Comics, after making the massive 50-plus page first issue available free on Free Comic Book Day. It's a collector's edition that's coming out weekly, and it's being released in a larger size to match the next 4 issues, which come weekly throughout May. And it's printed in its original landscape format. So yeah, it is a story exploring immigration and violence and, language and various barriers that we would come across. And it's all tied together with a sci-fi twist. And yeah, I thought it was great. Leon, your thoughts?
I thought this first issue was really, really good. It has the Image colours that I love. You know me and my fuchsias and purples.
The sexy purple.
Yeah, but beyond that, the format alone, the shift to like wide, is used so well. And you know me, I'm more of a digital guy. I can see why it would have worked so perfectly when on panelsyndicate.com. Because like your monitor's widescreen, and often reading portrait style comics on a monitor is annoying unless you turn your monitor around. But it fits so well, and it does, because of the different type of space that you've now got available. It leads to some really interesting panel composition, but also like splash pages don't feel like this, or less splash pages and more like one page is one panel. They don't feel now these overwrought or overused panels. Instead, it is a good like focus. So like you have some panels where it'll be like a long shot of the person and then cut to a close-up, and we get that particularly when they introduce one of the characters, Oscar, and I love how they do that, where it'll be a close-up and it'll say Liddy or Oscar, and then the next panel will be them with where we see half of their face, and then it will show on the map where they are on each side of the border or barrier. So she's from far Texas and he's from San Pedro, Honduras. And that stuff's done like just so well, so naturally. And one of the things that I find is super remarkable, like I don't speak Spanish. I understand a very rudimentary level of it, but you can just garner what's going on during all these Spanish panels, the way that the like panels are constructed, the way how the characters' expressions are done. I think Marcus Martin does great work with not just the character expression and design, but also the more the syntax of the different panels, and how each, I keep calling them shots because it is very cinematic, but how each shot relates to the next one. And there is one of the things that are great about comics, obviously, is that we're looking at frozen points in time, and we connect the dots, and causality and the movement of time happens by us moving to the next panel.
Yeah.
And the way it's done with this has, I mean, a lot, for me, the ones that are more successful at this are the ones where the flow is really good, and I feel like the flow is really well done in this. And I think Vincente's colours are, because with things like this, especially in the south of the border sections or the South American, Middle American sections, it's easy for them just to be like different types of brown and orange because of the sand and the environment. But I feel like colours handled so well here. Like you have like this red book, which seems quite important, this red notebook, or like the blue skies, or the different shades of all the people trying to get on the train. I think it's very effective, and you just, like, if the thing that happens at the end of this issue hadn't happened, I would still be interested in following these characters and seeing what happens. And that extra spice at the end just makes it even more of a tempting allure to keep going. One thing I will say though, and you were speaking about this before, Greg, having to hold it like a calendar.
Yeah.
If there's any comic that I would prefer to read digitally, it is this book.
Well, I guess this is your worst nightmare then, Leon, because you're going to have to go to pick this up in print if you want to carry on reading it.
Not essentially. The panelsyndicate.com still has Name Your Price on there.
Is it still there?
Yeah, and you can even leave a message to to Brian and Marcus.
Oh, lies then.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Digital wins out in the end.
Image website lies. Lies.
But, yeah, it's still available on there to buy now, and that's probably how I will complete the series. Just because I think, my screens are really, really nice. So like the color and everything will jump out. And when reading this, you were reading it like a calendar. I was reading it in a way where I had to sort of fold the pages in a weird way and trying to avoid, like, hold the gutters instead of put my finger over any ink. So awkward when you have to turn page. But I do respect and like that they have released it physically. And I hope it does well, because it seems like it's quite an experiment, not only to release it as a widescreen book or widescreen comic, but also the fact that they did name your price. So I'm always intrigued when writers or artists or musicians or whatever do like name your price, and I hope it works out well.
I actually liked that it was in landscape and everything else, and I'm going to be a purist, and I'm going to try and pick this up, and I'm going to read it through what I think are my two best screens, which are my eyes in a natural daylight. I can't read things off computer screens, but that's just me. I'm not good at reading things digitally.
This is a funny conversation, because I wanted to touch on this if we had time, but Free Comic Book Day makes me want to read more stuff digitally. Like, I have this stack of comics that I struggle to sit down and find the space, and, like, not just the headspace, but, like, the literal physical space where I can be comfortable reading these books. And I feel like I'd much rather read some of these on my iPad while I'm on the train, you know, or even just in bed or whatever, because I just find that more comfortable. And that's kind of what I'm used to. And because I'm forced to read these on paper, it makes me realize that. Except for Barrier, which I really enjoyed reading in landscape format, because it felt a bit more natural, like it's the whole page out in front of you upwards, like it's not taking up this horizontal space, it's taking up this vertical space. And I had a clipboard that I had lying around, so I read the book on that, so I could hold it in front of me like I was holding an iPad. And I found that really natural and, like, you know, engaging. So I will be buying these on paper, whereas I think a lot of the other runs that we found from Free Comic Book Day, I'll probably end up buying them through Comixology or through the publisher's website.
You see, I'm old school.
Oh, we know this.
Yeah, I can't deal with reading things digitally. It's just I my eyes get tired quicker, and it's just I don't feel comfortable sitting at my computer trying to read things off a computer screen.
I find it's more about physically placing yourself, so like having a table which, like, I would never not read these comics at a table. I'd have to put them down on a surface to be able to read them. I can't read them on my lap.
I can, you see, I hold them in my hand like I would hold a book, kind of like with the spine cradled in my palm, and I turn the pages.
I find that more, like, physically painful to do, like in a lot of different. I find it physically painful to turn the pages, and just that feeling of maybe I'm ruining the comic that that I love in front of me, and then also physically, like, the way I sit and the way I like plant myself while I'm trying to read, and I realize I become quite tense trying to read these books, like physically tense. But I just think that it's interesting that me and Leon have the opposite feeling on this one, because I really want to buy Barrier on paper.
Well, I mean, you know, I've bought them. They're my comics. I'm going to read them, and I'm going to bag them, and I'm going to board them, and maybe I'll come back to them one day and read them again. In fact, some of them I probably will come back to and read again. And that's what they're for. It's my library. It's where I find my joy. So, I mean, if I'm careful with them and everything. I don't want them to be ripped or torn or deteriorate too quickly or whatever else, but I'm not going to baby them, because the purpose of them is to be read and looked at and to be enjoyed. So that's the way I am with them.
I admire that.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
And I think that brings us to a close as far as the comics are concerned. So that has been our stack our mighty stack for episode 35. So we've got a couple of things on the pull list, and then there's a question that I wanted to answer. So for the pull list, it's just me. I don't know if you've got anything on there, Ray.
No, but while you're talking, I'll have a quick sift through.
Okay, so for May the 16th, which is the day this podcast is released, so Wednesday, May the 16th, we've got Curse Words number 14. Continuation of Curse Words, which is fantastic. Dead Hand number 2, which I reviewed the first one a couple episodes ago, and it's a really cool spy thriller. Get on that. Death of Love number 4, which will... I'm not sure if that's the final one or not. I don't know. I don't think so. I think there might be 5 issues. But yeah, that's a really cool story as well. We've got another issue of Kick-Ass, so this is like the new Kick-Ass run. We've also talked about that previously on the show, and we've talked about Death of Love as well. We've got Asagi Yojimbo, The Hidden number 3, which is the third part of a 7-part series. Batman number 47, ongoing TMNT number 82, still the longest running TMNT comic. And TMNT Universe number 22. So, for May 23rd, which is the following week, the one thing that I wanted to address that was coming out is TMNT Urban Legends number 1. That's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Urban Legends number 1. And what this is, it is a reprinting of the Image run. So what they're doing is they're reprinting the whole Image run, and then they're adding a couple of extra issues to the end of it. So that's going to be really cool. And that's going to be something that I am definitely going to be picking up on May 23rd. So, Ray, you got anything for us?
Yeah, looking through this week's, that would be the 16th, there's something called Flavor, which, again, I'm just going off the covers of these, but Flavor looks like chefs competing for ultimate celebrity and food. It looks like, what was it called? Shokugeki no Soma, but a Western version. That looks interesting. There's something called A Walk Through Hell by Garth Ennis, so that appeals. And then, just because I've been watching Let's Plays of Dark Souls lately, I realised there's a tie-in to the first game that's coming out this week called Dark Souls: The Age of Fire. And apparently that's to coincide with the re-release on the Switch.
I should mention there are other Dark Souls comics already.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, they've been collected into trades and things, and
okay.
They're not bad, they're pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I know someone who's got a couple of them. I bought him a couple for his birthday, actually, because he likes Dark Souls, and I buy people comics, so...
Nice, alright.
Yeah.
I'll check this one out, and then maybe go back to those.
Yeah. And that has been the pull list for this week. So, on from there, it's a question, and this is a question from... a friend of ours, and he says, "Hey guys, further to your review of Pug Nay Shush, which almost sounded like a self-published comic, are there any new self-published comics that you'd recommend, or any old favourite self-published comics that were so good that you wish they'd been able to release it as a one-off physical copy?" He then goes on to explain that he's always wanted a nice hardback edition of a comic called Plan B, which is by a member of staff from the Forbidden Planet store in Leicester. Goes by the name of Mitz. So, guys, I've got an answer to this. It's a short answer, and that is there's a website called Moonhead Press, and they sort of like do self-published comics, sparse, few and far between. You can see like up until this year, the last time they published anything on this website was in 2014, so it's been 4 years between times, and because they've got everything sort of in date order that they've ever made. And it's 2 stories in particular that stand out on this website that I wish I could get collected into some kind of trade or hardback. And one of these stories is called The Deal, and it's a Batman story, and again another one that explores the relationship between the Batman and the Joker and provides an ending, like an ultimate ending to that relationship. I won't spoil it because it's a short comic and it's online and it's free to read, so you should all check it out. And the artwork in it is amazing. And this is like a self-published comic, and it's so well written and so well put together and so well concluded in the short space of time that it has. And there's a really, actually, I mean, everything on this website is kind of cool, but there's another one on there as well called God's End, which is sort of a Superman story, exploring the idea of Superman having lived an unnaturally long life, watching the people of Earth, trying to help the people of Earth, and realizing that, he can't make that choice. Who is he to decide who lives and who dies, and who to save and who not to save? And in the end, he realizes that it's not his place to decide that, and he leaves Earth and he travels the universe and the galaxy, and he finds other worlds with life where it's simpler and it's easier, and more primitive life forms that are in tune with nature and that aren't violent and horrible as the human race can be at times. And he in the end he makes a final decision, and he does what he feels he must do. And again, it's short, it's like single issue length, it's only a few pages, and again, in the time it has, in the panels that it gives you, it delivers a full, complete, satisfying story, and I love it. So yeah, these are two things to check out. These are like two self-published comics that I would recommend, and these are two things to check out, and these are two things that I would like collected at some point into a book. And that is The Deal and God's End on Moonhead Press. So that's moonheadpress.blogspot.co.uk. So, I guess that brings us to a close.
Well, I would just mention before, I would add a previous book that I've spoken about, I believe it's on episode 26, done by the Ben Passmore, who's the author and artist of DAYGLOAHOLE, which Rahul spoke about this episode. But his self-published book, Your Black Friend, is a favourite of mine in that space, and one that as I did on that previous episode, I would recommend. Luckily, we've got like a physical release that we can get, but one thing that would be great if there was like an extended version, maybe with a hardback copy or something.
There is. It came out quite recently, which I think I mentioned on one of the previous, maybe just a couple of weeks ago. It's called Your Black Friend and Other Strangers as a hardback copy. So it's the short story that you talked about and some others attached with it. It's a gorgeous copy. I can lend it to you if you like.
Yeah, that was my alley-oop. But yes.
Sorry, right.
But yeah, well, I'm lucky in that way that has been released. So that would be my shout out.
That's set up right there.
Well, I also like, if we're talking about ones that we would have liked to have been published and then actually have been published. Something I've talked about in the past, which is Demon by Jason Shiger, which was published online as a webcomic only, and then years later was published on paper. And the final volume only came out like within the last 6 months or so, which was done by, if you give me one moment, I think it was First Second. So that's the publishing company. And it's actually still pretty hard to find. I've never seen it in a comic book shop, but that's one I'd recommend if you want something that's, somewhat more difficult to get a hold of and, has a limited run in publishing.
Okay. So I guess that has been Ace Comicals episode number 35. You can find us on Facebook under Ace Comicals. You can find us on Twitter at Ace Comicals. You can find us on Instagram at Ace Comicals. You can find links to all of these places plus a few more at www.acecomicals.com, which is our main hub for everything, and it's where we publish all the podcasts. You can also find us on various podcatchers and places where you'll be able to listen to stuff. And I will just bring up the list now so I can tell you. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Castro. That's right, we're now available on Spotify. And you can find us. You can find me on Twitter at Batto. That's BATTOU. If you want to field a question for Ace Comicals, like we just answered, then you can field one to either my DMs on Twitter, or you can at the Ace Comicals Twitter account. Which is
slide into our DMs.
Yes, you can do that. You have permission. You can also send a question directly to our email account, which is acecomicals.gmail.com. Ray, where can we find you?
Twitter would be best, at Monkeh, so that's at MOONKEH.
Leon, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Leon Everett, and I just want to say shout out to our fans, really, people who've been listening, like episode to episode. It's been nice. We met one of our listeners on New Comic Book Day, and it's always nice to know that there are people out there, and we have like listeners like Mike who engages quite a bit, filling us with good questions, and it's just it's nice that to have like a tangible feeling that there's people out there listening and interacting. And if anything, it would just be it'd be cool to like have a bit more interaction with some of you guys and find out more about what you guys are enjoying, and trying to handle any hard questions you have. So yes, send them on in.
Yeah, consider that an open invitation to join the conversation. So, I mean, you can engage with us in so many different ways, and we're always open to any kind of questions you have, any kind of, you want to start a conversation about comics or anything like that, just join in. Comment on some of the stuff that we've talked about this episode. If you've read it as well, let us know what you thought. And that is Ace Comicals, over and out.